It's time to discover Charnwood. Perfectly located right in the center of the country and enjoying superb transport links, there is no better place to visit, work and live. For nearly 600 million years, the powerful forces of nature have been sculpting our breathtaking landscapes. Evidence of our unique geological history is scattered among picturesque villages and can be experienced up close in the rocks of Bradgate Park and Beacon Hill. Such is the importance of Charnwood Forest, it is now an aspiring UNESCO Global Geopark. At the heart of this dramatic landscape is the dynamic university and market town of Loughborough, home to the last major bell foundry in the UK, 800-year-old markets and the Great Central Heritage Railway. In Charnwood, we are proud of our past and excited for our future. Our award-winning Loughborough University and cutting-edge science and enterprise parks are leading world-class research, innovation and sport, and nurturing the stars and heroes of future generations. Discover Charnwood, a fascinating destination promising a non-stop voyage from ancient origins to future potential. In Charnwood, we are shaping tomorrow's world today.
Now, a fossil found in rock in Charnwood Forest in Leicestershire could be evidence of one of the earliest predators that ever lived 560 million years ago. Paleontologists say it pushes back their understanding of modern animal groups like jellyfish by 20 million years, as Victoria Hicks reports.
560 million years ago, Charnwood Forest sat at the bottom of a deep ocean on the sides of a series of volcanoes, and it's here where this earliest known animal predator would have lived. How significant is this find?
Well, the early history of animal life is very poorly understood, and that's mostly because there are very few fossils preserved at that time. This fossil pushes back one of the modern groups of animals by 20 million years further back into time, and that's the group that included the sea anemones, the jellyfish and the corals.
It's understood this specimen lived in shallower water than other fossils found here. It's different from anything else found around the world because it has a skeleton with densely packed tentacles.
So we know that the animal had a stalk and a cup, and on top of that, or within that cup, was a polyp, very much like a sea anemone with lots of tentacles that it used to catch food.
This fossil has been named Aurora lumini attenboroughi after Sir David Attenborough, who used to hunt for fossils here as a child in Charnwood Forest. Interestingly though, he said he never went looking for fossils in the rocks where this one was found because they were considered so ancient they dated from before life began on this planet. That all changed in 1957 when a schoolboy found this fern-like impression. It turned out to be one of the oldest fossilised animals, Charnia masoni, further establishing Charnwood Forest as a world-class site for paleontologists.
For the first time, we're able to say at 560 million years ago, there was a group of animals that looked just like modern animals, that had skeletons, that were predators and that were colonial. There were lots of them living together. That's a really, really big thing.
Victoria Hicks, BBC East Midlands Today, Charnwood.
Welcome to Stanton under Bardon in beautiful Hinckley and Bosworth Borough. Over this weekend we've got loads of volunteers both from Stanton, the Geopark and all around the country joining us at Charnwood Forest Geopark for our second of our archaeological community digs. Now, a big thank you to the University of Leicester Archaeological Services and also the University of Lincoln, Professor Carenza Lewis, who are leading our archaeological digs. What we will find, who knows? Follow along for our live stream and you'll find out more of those discoveries. We'll be bringing you those. But what will be found here? Stanton under Bardon, of course, mentioned in the Doomsday Book of 1086. Only a few villagers at that point, but a long history. You might be able to see Main Street behind me, where you can see some of those terraced buildings built for the quarrymen and their families who would have lived here. Because of course, just over here, we have Cliff Hill Quarry, and Bardon Hill Quarry is not far away. This area is steeped in its geology. What will we find? Let's find out. Hello everyone, and welcome to another one of our Charnwood Forest Geopark Community Digs live streams, bringing you all the updates as they happen, this time from Stanton under Bardon. My name's Jack Matthews, I'm the Geoheritage Officer at Charnwood Forest Geopark, and firstly, to start with, an apology to our listeners and watchers on Facebook. We had a little technical difficulty there, but we hope we've sorted that out for you and you're joining us live for the next about 90 minutes. Now, of course, we're going to be showing you some of the finds that have been happening and letting you know about the process of test pitting, and also talk to some of the people, hopefully on site, as they finish off some of their test pits. But if you've got any questions, if you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, you can ask those live, and I will try my very hardest to put those to some of the experts, and we'll find out what these discoveries mean. Not only what are they, but what they might mean for our understanding here in Stanton under Bardon. Now, we just talked about there how we're in Stanton. This is the second of 3 community archaeological digs happening across Charnwood Forest, and we want to start by thanking the National Lottery Heritage Fund, who are making this possible. They are funding this as part of the Charnwood Forest Landscape Partnership Scheme, and also a huge thank you to the University of Leicester Archaeological Services and also the University of Lincoln, who are making all of this happen for Charnwood Forest. A huge thank you also to the volunteers. This couldn't happen without the many, many people who have given their time to come and dig test pits across Stanton under Bardon this weekend. Now, you might be able to see that the sun is shining on me, but it hasn't always been the way this weekend, and we've had some rain this morning. Can we have a look at the we haven't got the weather on the live feed anymore, but there's showers zooming through Leicestershire today, so it hasn't been an easy day to dig either. Now, if you don't know Stanton under Bardon already, this is a place that is in the Doomsday Book, as we talked about. That's one of the reasons this site has been selected as the villages to investigate with this test pitting method. And of course, a lot of industrial heritage as well. But it's also got some fantastic geological heritage. Now, we're here mostly to talk about archaeology, but I'd be missing a trick if I didn't also try and spread some news about our fantastic geological heritage. So let's look at a video that we shot yesterday in the nearby nature reserve of Bardon, and let's go and look at that video right now if we can. One of the other hidden treasures of Stanton under Bardon is Bardon Nature Reserve, where we're standing now, a beautiful wooded summit just to the north of the village. And this site has a lot of history as well. There's a number of historic, very small quarries that would have been used for local walling and perhaps some road production, road construction as well. But the rocks here are not just revealing the human history of this parish, but also the geological history. These rocks were deposited around 560 million years ago at the bottom of the deep sea, when this area of Charnwood Forest was somewhere around 60 degrees south of the equator. These rocks are known as the Bragate Formation because they are the same strata that can be seen around Old John Tower in the lovely park there. And what's interesting about these rocks, if you come and look at them, is that you can see the layers of the sand and the silt, and you might be able to notice that in some of these layers, the layer starts as sand at the bottom and changes gradually upwards to being silt. We call this normal grading, and it shows us that these rocks, these sediments, were deposited at the bottom of the deep sea, and that they were deposited by what's known as a turbidity current. These are deep sea avalanches of sediment and water tumbling down the deep sea slope, moving at great pace and depositing rocks like this behind them. Now, fossils have not been found at Billabara, but these are the same strata that have yielded many fantastic fossil discoveries elsewhere in Charnwood Forest. And that is why we have chosen Billabara Nature Reserve as the home of our new geosite to celebrate the Charnwood Forest fossil Charniodiscus, which we're going to spin around to now and show you the fantastic fossil sculpture produced by Peter Ledbetter and installed by our fantastic volunteers in the past week. Do come along to Billabara to find out more about this fossil.
Hello again, and we're joined by Dr. Julie Attard, who's joining us, who is the Programme Manager for the Charnwood Forest Geopark Landscape Partnership Scheme project. And just before you shoot off to see some digs, we wanted to ask you some questions. Now, as part of the lottery project, we are hosting or holding 3 of these community digs, but we've got many wonderful places to choose from.
Probably seems quite an unlikely place because today it sits between and so it has proved to be. So we've had a really good couple of days digging, and we're hoping to understand from looking at those assemblages of pottery how the village has developed over time. So which parts of it are older, when was it occupied, is there any evidence of Roman or prehistoric activity, or is it all medieval or post-medieval? So that's what we've been trying to find out.
And we're going to show you some of those finds over the next hour and a quarter, because there's some very interesting things being discovered here in Stanton and Bardon over the past day and a half. Julie, do you have a favourite find so far?
Oh, my favourite find. I think I was quite close to one of the test pits at the southern end of the village when they found some medieval pottery. And I always get really excited about medieval pottery because it is quite rare in Charnwood Forest. We're not finding it as much as you do in other parts of Leicestershire. So that was really exciting. But I also like some of the modern finds. So we found quite a few children's toys where children in the last 100 years or so have buried things in the garden, as I'm sure we all have, you know, when we were kids. And it's lovely to find those things too. That also tells part of the social history of the village.
And we'll be bringing you some of the toy finds as well. It won't just be the medieval and very old ones. You'll be seeing those as well. Now, all being well, if we have a good internet connection, Julie's going to take us live to the scene of one of the test pits. Just tell us whereabouts are you heading in the village?
So I'm heading down to the other end of Main Street from where we were at the village hall at the moment. So I'm heading down to the opposite end of Main Street where we've still got some test pits open. They are all beginning to finish now. So I'm hoping to race up there and get there before they start backfilling. And yeah, we believe that's the older part of the village. So that's the bit where we've been finding most of the medieval pottery.
Very interesting. Right, we're going to let Julie go, because who knows what might be found, and we want to get there before backfilling is happening.
Thanks,
and so thank you, Julie. And what we're going to do now is, because you can see me on the edge of the village hall here, but behind the camera is a hive of activity, because what people are doing here with the test pits, we've got some 20 test pits, and can we bring the map in of the sites across Stanton and Bardon? Because Stanton and Bardon is a very linear village, and so we've got scattered across the village, thanks to all the householders who've let us come and dig a hole in their garden. What a test pit is 1 metre by 1 metre, and then what happens is each layer or spit is excavated 10 centimetres at a time, and any finds that are found in that 10 centimetre layer are bagged up and they're brought back here to the village hall, where they have a fantastic team who are cleaning all of the finds. And if I can, let's go back full screen. If I bring you around here, we might be able to see some of the many finds. Each of these trays here is some of the finds from one of those layers, one of those 10-centimeter layers in one of those test pits. So you can see each layer in each test pit, a different box. So many boxes of finds being bought here in the village hall this weekend. But also, if the camera will follow me, which it is, isn't this amazing? We're over to a washing station here. Can I ask you, what's your name?
Heather.
And where are you joining us from today?
You mean, where are we at the moment?
Or where
Stanton
have you come
under
from? Are
Bardon.
you in
I'm from Leicester.
You're from Leicester. Joining us from Leicester, we've got people helping from all around the county, not just Charnwood Forest. And you are currently Pit 7, Context 6. Context is another word for one of those layers. But do you have a favourite find of the day that you've been cleaning so far?
Absolutely. So one of them is one of the clay bowls. So I've seen lots of the stems, but I've had pieces of the bowl today, and that's been really neat. I've never seen that before.
Fantastic. So it sounds like this isn't your first time doing this.
It is. It's my very first day ever.
Oh, wow. So that's fantastic. We've got people for the first time. I think we've got quite a few people who've done this before as well, which is really useful. And let's have a look. Who else have we got? Everyone's working. There's lots of muddy water here because everything's having to be cleaned. We've got a lovely piece of blue and white pottery, but we're going to bring you some fantastic finds on our special finds cam in a moment. Apologies, the weather is picking up and blowing all the doors around, but we're managing to maintain it. I'm going to spin back around here because one thing we want to show you also is that you don't just have to dig to find some history, and Stanton under Bardon is a fantastic example of that. So if you're looking for somewhere to explore in Stanton under Bardon to understand its human history, then you could not really do better than a walk from the centre of the village up towards Billabara, that wonderful sculpture that we showed you, on a little bit of industrial heritage. Could we play that little video that we recorded earlier yesterday? So as you take the path north from Stanton under Bardon going towards Billabara, you'll come across this strange embankment structure. It's not geological, not glacial or anything like that. This is actually the evidence of some of the fascinating industrial heritage that's here in Stanton under Bardon. This is the Cliff Hill mineral railway line that ran from Cliff Hill, created in 1896, and it wasn't closed until 1948. This was a small 2-foot gauge railway line that ran from Cliff Hill, taking the produce of that quarry all the way to the railhead near Bardon. And if we just pause here and take a pan down to the right hand side, you can see how much of a prominent embankment there is here. So it's always worth having a look around you, because you don't always have to dig to find some of this heritage. A fascinating bit of local history, sadly put out of action as lorries became more popular to move the stone. But you can trace pretty much all of the route of the mineral railway from modern day Cliff Hill Quarry along here, Billabara Lane, where there's a few points where you can see the rails in the road surface, and all the way along to Bardon Hill. Check it out sometime. That was the Cliff Hill Mineral Railway. Go and have a walk along there and retrace the steps of a narrow gauge railway that ran from the quarry to the main railway head. A fantastic piece of industrial heritage preserved here, but we're mostly after what can be unearthed from beneath our feet today. Now, if you are watching some of the finds that we're going to show you in a moment and thinking, I'd like to get involved in that, I'd like to either offer up my back garden as a test pit, or you'd like to volunteer to dig and sieve the finds, or come and join us in a village hall and clean them off and see them clean for the first time in hundreds, if not thousands of years, then an opportunity is still there, because later in the year, in July, we have the third of our test pits, and test pit community archaeological digs. And that's going to be in the parish of Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eaves. So there's still chance to join us. We'd love you to join us. What we can guarantee you is lots of archaeological fun, tea, coffee, squash, and lots of cake as well. And I can tell you that a huge amount of cake has just been delivered to Stanton under Bardon Village Hall to thank all of the volunteers this weekend. You can find more information on the links that I'm showing on the page there, but you can also go to charnwoodforest.org/news, where you'll find a news story with specific links to both sign up to offer your garden as a test pit and also to sign up as a volunteer. You don't need to have had any experience of this before, and you don't need to live in Charnwood Forest or even in Woodhouse or Woodhouse Eaves. You can join us from anywhere. If you're keen to get involved, fun for all the family, do come and sign up and join us in July. And the dates for that are the 4th and the 5th of July. Sorry, having to zoom in there. Let's go to the historical map if we can. So we'll have a look at the historical map, which might reveal a bit more of why we have chosen this village to work on. So there you can see a historical map, and we are grateful to the National Library of Scotland, who has a huge database of historic maps for the map we're showing there. And you can see most of the older part of the village is in the south. That's the end with the beautiful thatched pub in. And while there is a scattering of buildings up towards the north, and we're more at the northern end here at the village hall, most of the buildings here have been added from the 1890s onwards, and you can see that in that historical map. If we skip forward one slide, we can also have a look at some of the geology. Now, you might be saying, is this just Jack pushing his scientific love on the viewers again? But no, it's important to understand the geology as well, because geology, of course, influences the soil. And as our volunteers are digging those test pits down 10 centimetres at a time and bringing all the finds back to the village hall, they, of course, need to know when they've got to the point where they're not going to find any human activity anymore, what's known as, are they down, have they reached natural, as the archaeologists would call it. And so having an understanding of what the natural, what the geology underlying any archaeological layers might be, understanding that is really, really important. Now, in some areas, that's been a kind of red Triassic sandstone, and in others, we've had some fantastic examples of the glacial deposits that can be found here. So on here, on that lovely map there, you can see the blue is a geological unit known as the Ode Beam unit. This is a geological unit of clay and pebbles from the last glacial around 440,000 years ago. And then those big blobs of deep red colour, those are what are now the two quarries here that make up Cliff Hill Quarry, the new and the old quarry. That's the South Charnwood diorite, or sometimes known as Markfieldite, from 560 million years ago, there or thereabouts. And you can see that creamy colour in the southern part of the village, marked with the initials EDW. That's the Edwalton Formation, part of the Triassic. So there are rusty red sandstone. So those are the units that we might be coming across, both as debris mixed into the soil and also the natural layer at the bottom. Now, at that point, we're hoping at some point that Julie might join us live. We're hoping to bring you that in a moment. But in the meantime, let's just cut for this very short little break. Hello, we're back live, and we're going to give you our first example of Finds Cam So if we can bring Finds Cam in, you'll see we've got a little camera set up so we can show you a little better than we did last time some of the finds that are happening. Now, some of these finds will not surprise you. We're mainly digging in people's gardens, but we've also been digging in the allotments and some other sites around the village. And some of the things we're finding, let's see if you might be able to recognize what this is here. This came out of one of the test pits. This was test pit 20, and this was a layer 2. So we're down between 10 and 20 centimeters deep. And of course, for the observant there, you might be able to put it in the comments. That is, of course, the bottom of a plant pot, a plastic plant pot. We've also had quite a lot of metal objects, nails and screws coming out. Lots of bits of glass bottles, telling us all about the modern usage of these areas. And then we'll just see if you might be able to recognize what that is. It's a white creamy color. It's plastic, and it's got ridges across it. You don't see these so much nowadays, but that is, of course, a plastic vending machine coffee cup. So all sorts of finds coming out of the test pits. We are going to bring you some of the older, more interesting ones, but we've got to gradually work our way down through the layers. I'm hoping some of the experts are going to join me shortly as well. Let's just cut away for a moment so we can find some more things. We'll be right back. Right, I can see that our colleague, Dr. Julie Attard, is live on the scene. She's just getting set up on one of the test pits. We will bring you, Julie, as soon as we can. Now, just a reminder, if you're joining us live and you're thinking, I would like to get involved in that, you can find more at charnwoodforest.org/news, and you'll see one of the news stories about joining in the archaeological digs. At that point, you can see that the weather is changing here in Stanton under Bardon as we finish up, and it's just started to rain a little bit on me. What we'll do is we're just waiting for Julie to reconnect. This is the joy of live streaming, everyone. I'm going to hopefully pull in one of our experts in a moment as well. Right. Let's try and bring Julie in. I can see that she's... Julie, can you hear us?
Hello, Jack. I don't know how well you can hear us.
A little bit crackly, but we can hear you.
Intermittent, but we're up on, okay. We're up on Preston Close, and I'm going to bring in the lovely homeowners to tell us a little bit about how their test pit has been going, if you don't mind. So
that's
right,
excellent.
I'll just, hello. So could you tell us a little bit about who are you first, and where are we?
So we're in Preston Close. I'm Sarah. This is my dad, Tim. And we've been digging today. We found quite a few bits of things. And then there's a bit of medieval pottery across, and a very important clay pipe as well. And, yeah, and it's been a great day. Yeah, it's been really good.
Excellent. So is this your first community dig? Is it the first time you've done this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. Like, everyone's been so nice, and it's been a great weekend. Lots of cake.
Cake's very important when you're digging, I think.
Apologies, I think we've got a bad connection down to Prescott Close, but that was, I must say, one of the neatest test pits of the day, where the homeowner had built a small wooden square around. I think we've lost Julie there, which is unfortunate, but thank you to the homeowners there at Prescott Close. We've got, I think, 4 or 5 test pits in that area. A newer, in terms of the age of the village, going back to 1086 at least, one of the newer estates in the village. There are even newer than that as well, but really interesting because it's in the southern part, so there's a lot of potential to find some of that older stuff. Hopefully we're going to bring in Professor Carenza Lewis in a moment, and we might get Julie back, but it might be the connection and the weather that's preventing that here today. While we are waiting, we'll just remind you on some of where we've got these spread out. So you can see those colours. That's just who's leading those and overseeing those digs today. But you can see we've got a big spread from the north to the south. They've been digging now for Saturday and Sunday. And some of the test pits have already closed. If you've hit that natural layer, you're not going to find anything else. And those test pits close, and we push the people to go and join another test pit to try and help out there. There are still many, many bags of fines to be washed here, and we'll go and see some of the fines washing in a moment. Yes, let's go. Let's pan round. Let's remove that. And I'm going to be very naughty and interrupt some people here. Let's join. Hello there. Can I join? Can I ask who you are and what you've joining us here today? What you've been up to?
Hi there, Tina. I'm actually not local. I'm from Loudham in Nottinghamshire, so I've travelled down 30 miles, especially to be involved in this little project.
Well, even though you're from across the county boundary, you're still very welcome. And have you had a favourite find of today that you've been working on?
I think in our pit it was quite interesting, but several different layers, and it was more about geology than it was about archaeology, but it was very interesting all the same. So
excellent. Carenza, can we steal you for a moment? We'll go back outside to give the so we're zooming back round, the camera's following us. Now all of this is only possible without the expertise of both ULAS and Professor Carenza Lewis at the University of Lincoln, who is leading not only this, but our other dig that we did 2 weeks ago in Newtown, Linford, and the one that is coming up in Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eaves. Why Stanton under Bardon? What questions do you want to answer here, or at least understand a bit more?
Well, we were interested in it because it's one of these villages that's a little bit further into the forest, and we know a little bit about its history, but not very much. And it had quite a simple linear layout. It looks from the maps, the earlier maps, first edition Ordnance Survey maps, as if it was very much smaller then, but of course that's only 150 years ago. So we really wanted to know what the sort of gap was between the kind of Doomsday Book record of it, really, and the 19th century. And also we just wanted to sort of spread on. It's interesting, it's out of the main river valleys. So again, it's pushing us a bit further into the forest area. And the Tun place name was quite good because obviously we've got Newtown, Linford, but that's town rather, whereas Stanton, it's the Tun, which recent research has suggested is actually to do with a land unit that comes with the people, if you see what I mean. So it's an Anglo-Saxon term, which means you've got the state, the land, the people and everything. So we wanted a Tun place name would be really good. And Newtown, Linford is a different derivation that comes from the Newtown. I was going to switch my radio off because otherwise you're going to hear all these various panicky, oh my God, test bit 4 needs to backfill type messages coming over. So yeah, it was in the right space. It filled a little bit of a gap in the jigsaw puzzle for us. And it was a manageable sort of size as well.
And obviously you've mentioned, and we've been mentioning today, some of the fact that it was mentioned in Doomsday 1086. Have we got any sense of things, evidence from before that now that's come up for the first time today or this weekend?
Yes and no is the answer to that. So we've got very little medieval pottery generally. I can come back to that, but we haven't got any Anglo-Saxon pottery that I'm aware of that we've seen so far. So nothing pre-Norman conquest. I don't think we've had any Roman material whatsoever. In fact, I don't think we had any Roman material from Newtown, Linford. certainly these settlements are not in existence on this spot in the Roman period, and it's starting to look as if, although there's the odd Roman settlement known here and there in the Charnwood Forest area and the odd road that's supposed to go across it, it really doesn't feel like it's being intensively used in the Roman period at all. We have got at least one worked flint flake. So that's a prehistoric date. Interestingly, it's up from sort of Preston Close, so which is slightly further, it's away from the high street and kind of uphill a little bit on the clay. So it looks like we've got people in the prehistoric period using the landscape. But yes, we have got some evidence of activity earlier than the Domesday Book, but it's a lot earlier. I mean, we're talking 2,000 or 3,000 years earlier than Domesday Book. So there's a bit of a gap.
A bit of a gap, and there's still time.
Well, yeah, it is sort of 2:30 now, so they should all have stopped digging by now and or at least be finally finishing off their bottom the context they're on to get backfilled, because we need everyone back here, or to be getting ready to come back here for 3 o'clock, 3:30, so we can do an upsum roundup at 4 o'clock, which we'll then find out from everyone what their latest news is. So there may be, the tantalizing thing is there will still be finds from those bottom layers, will still be out on the test pits rather than sitting in here where we'll see them. But there are a couple of key highlights that have come out of this. So shall I tell you about those?
Absolutely, tell us.
So I think one thing we clearly seem to have 2 or 3 concentrations, very small concentrations of test pits with medieval pottery in them. So we've got one sort of close to the middle of the village, just a little bit south of here, where there's 3 or 4 test pits together, each produce small amounts of medieval sherds, only 2 or 3 sherds maybe. 1 or 2 of them are really freshly broken, or not freshly broken in that somebody's hit them with a mattock this morning, but they're freshly broken. They haven't been sculling about in the plough soil and got worn. So those look like they must have been pretty close to where people are living. So we've got a quite small cluster of test pits together there. Test pit 19, that was a bit further down the hill in the back, that had medieval pottery. And the $64,000 question at the moment is whether test pit 20, which is right at the bottom of the hill, where there are earthworks of presumed medieval date either side, where we've been digging the garden there. And last time I saw it, they were on dark soil. It still had lots of finds coming out of it. Have they found any medieval pottery? But it looks like we've almost got a kind of shotgun settlement pattern, where you've just got a peppered pattern of settlement here, all of these little nodes that are really quite small, and that's really quite similar to what we had at Newtown Linford. So it'll be really interesting when we go to Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eaves to see if we get the same pattern, and then we can look at again the evidence from Anstey and Wittig and Rothley and pull all of that together and try and make sense of it. So that's the first insight. We've got this, as I say, scattergun settlement pattern here, it looks like, in the medieval period. We've got some contact with the wider world in the sort of 17th, 18th century. We've got some test pits that got pottery from Staffordshire. Don't think I've seen anything like German stoneware, imported German stoneware. So it looks like stuff's coming from maybe 100 miles away, but maybe not too much further than that. So again, feels like quite a tightly knit, slightly isolated community, perhaps, in the 18th century. And the one thing we've got, which is quite unusual that I've not seen, we've got a huge amount of child-related toy-type stuff. And usually you get one child-related item, like a marble or a doll, or, a plastic figurine or something, from every 4 test pits on average. You dig 400 test pits, you'd expect 40 of them to produce anything child related. We've got much more than that here. Most of it's 20th century, but we've just got a fantastic range of stuff. So we've got a little plastic figure, looks a bit like Abraham Lincoln, though I can't really imagine that Abraham Lincoln would have been a top-selling child's plastic toy. We've got a little terracotta figurine that may be part of a whistle. We've got several Lego bricks, and we've got a lovely, well, you remember the dinosaur, the Ankylosaurus, yes. We think, an entire plastic dinosaur toy. So there's quite a nice theme emerging that children here in the kind of middle 20th century, they seem to have families who are giving them toys, spending quite a lot on their toys, because we're finding so much more than we normally do. So it's an isolated community throughout a lot of history, I think. And then as it starts to grow, I guess, in the middle of the 20th century, we're seeing that the children here are clearly being really, well loved and well looked after. And the funniest thing, I think, really, was that we found a Twix wrapper yesterday, which has a date on it, of course, 1991. 2 of the archaeologists said, oh God, it's older than we are. The dinosaur, of course, is actually younger than some of us other archaeologists, because that must be 1970s or later, I should think.
Absolutely, I think the ankylosaur is much younger, but yes, it's always food is useful, isn't it? Because you get a more precise date with the best before a bit. We had a dig a few years ago with a bread bag, sliced bread.
Yeah, crisp packets also good. Yeah, we've had a curly whirly wrapper bar a few years ago, and there's a huge debate about whether they were smaller now than they were then. And you could actually test this hypothesis because you could see the weight written on the one we'd found in the trench, which was 1999, and then compare it with today's. And actually, they haven't got smaller.
There you go. There's an academic paper in that, isn't there? The archaeological evidence against shrinkflation. Yeah, there we go. Right, we are going to bring you. We've got a lovely setup with a camera looking down, and we can bring you some of those finds. And so, if you've got, would you be able to show us if you grab a few things? Bring them in, and we'll put them on the camera. And while we're doing that, we'll just cut for a moment. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Stanton under Bardon. Professor Carenza Lewis is bringing some lovely finds to show you on the finds cam. But there you were hearing, we are getting a little bit of medieval pottery. One piece of worked flint that's showing us perhaps a much older bit of evidence for people being in this landscape of Stanton under Bardon, and hopefully we might be able to show you that at some point. But still that gap, you know, will we find anything Roman? I can see that in the background of the village hall, there's still lots of bags being washed. And of course, some of these things, when they are found in the test pit, you don't really know what they are until they come back here to be washed and analysed. And so there may still be amazing discoveries, even though most of the test pits have now wrapped up and will be backfilling. Who knows what might be in those bags at the back of the village hall. Now, while a few specimens are being prepared, we should tell you this isn't just about engaging with the community. All of the finds will be properly documented and stored properly in a museum or academic institution, and there will be a report written up by our experts as well, so that the finds that have been found here in people's gardens and other places around the village help to inform future work on understanding the history of Stanton under Bardon, Charnwood Forest and Leicestershire as a whole. And hopefully we're going to get some talks later in the year as well to find out more. We've got some fantastic finds. Carenza, if I put you on this side, you can then pop things in. And if we could bring up there's finds cam on the, and so if we pop things onto the paper there.
Right, okay, so let's start with the serious bits first. Well, this is all serious. So this is a really nice piece of medieval pottery here that you might not be able to see it too clear. The really significant thing about this is the very sort of sharp, unworn edges to it there. So this is going to be about 14th, 15th century, and you can contrast it with this other sherd, which is possibly broadly the same date, a bit earlier, but you can perhaps see how worn that is. So that one has been rolled around the plough saw a little bit, whereas this is really fresh. This is what the medieval pottery looks like. I always say to people, it looks like a bit of old biscuit. The more like a bit of old biscuit it looks like, the more likely it is to be interesting. So those are quite fun bits. There's another point actually I made, which I didn't make, which is we've got bits of clay tobacco pipe here. Now, normally you find a lot of that. I'll just put it near the scale there. We're finding remarkably little clay tobacco pipe in these villages generally. So we're now starting to wonder if maybe some of these places that are slightly more isolated are just not getting those sort of manufactured items out there. Normally you find quite a lot of clay tobacco pipe if particularly if you're in Victorian layers, and we've had a couple of Victorian rubbish pits in some of the test pits, and we're just not getting much of it. Usually you find it in plough soil because the ploughmen are smoking while they're ploughing and it gets thrown away. It's very easily breakable. We're finding very little of that. So we think that might be telling us something about people's, again, isolation, but also perhaps something about their well, health, maybe. They're obviously presumably going to be healthier if they're not smoking.
And if people are finding clay pipe, because people do, it's kind of a fairly common thing to find. What dates would clay pipe?
Well, it comes in, obviously, you've got the discovery of America is when tobacco first comes in. So it's really coming in from the late 16th century. But in the early years, the 16th and 17th century, it's still very expensive because it's got to be brought over from America. The bowls of the pipes tend to be really tiny, and they're not as sophisticated in manufacture. So the bores, the holes in them are often quite large. When you get into the 19th century, you've got steamships and so on. It's much cheaper to get tobacco over, so it's cheaper to buy it. The bowls of the pipes get bigger, and the holes down them often get smaller as well. So it's quite easy to find those. They're very recognisable once you know them, and it's just surprising we're not getting very much here, especially given that we're seeing a lot of kind of stuff once we're in the 20th century. Of course, once you're in the 20th century, people are smoking cigarettes. You occasionally see photographs of people sitting in First World War trenches smoking clay tobacco pipes. But really, by the end of the First World War, nobody's using those any longer. They're smoking cigarettes or proper pipes, as it were.
So potentially the people of Stanton under Bardon ahead of the curve on the smoking of tobacco.
They're certainly ahead of the curve on not smoking tobacco, I think, probably. So, and I talked about these little models. So this is the little terracotta figurine that we think is a whistle. So you can see, I don't know how is that showing well. Yeah,
that's coming up.
Yeah. So it looks a little bit a cross between a garden gnome and Father Christmas. And you can see here at the bottom there, you've got what looks like the mouthpiece of the whistle and the hole there that the sound would have gone through. We haven't actually managed to get sound out of it yet. It does blow, the hole goes through, but it doesn't make a whistling noise. Probably the reed's gone, but you can see the sort of shape of it there. It's very much using the same manufacturing techniques and the same sort of clay as tobacco pipes are made, and it's just possible that it might be something to do with a tobacco pipe rather than actually a whistle. But so we got that little figurine. Then we've got, this is the Abraham Lincoln figure, as I call it. So I don't know, is it a bit well dressed for a cowboy? Looks like an engineer or something. Must have been holding something there. Someone was suggesting it might be a snooker player. If anyone listening to this stream would have any suggestions about who that might be.
Yes, indeed. If you recognise any of these items or have any ideas, do pop them in the comments, and we'd be love to get your thoughts.
We really like to do crowdsourced research. And this is something, if you know what it is, you'd recognise it. I don't know what it is, but there's another little figurine that's come out there. We don't know who that is. I'm sure if you put it into Google Lens, it would probably pick it up, but we don't have a phone signal here, so we can't do that. But again, if anybody knows what that is, we've got several other little bits and pieces. And as I say, we definitely seem to have a feeling that there's a lot of very well, indulged, nurtured children who are clearly getting quite fun stuff in their, I don't know, Christmas stocking.
And also we saw some fantastic medieval pottery there. And what are we, with the different pottery types, what are we looking out for? You were saying with the medieval stuff, like a biscuit.
Yes, so if you just take these away now. So if I put the medieval pottery back in there, I mean, this is slightly later medieval. I would have thought this is probably going to be, as I say, 14th, 15th, 16th century, probably post-Black Death rather than pre-Black Death. It's quite hard fired. You can hear it makes quite a high-pitched sound when you tap it like that. This is interesting because you see a little bit of the glaze on the inside there, and you can see all this black deposit outside. On the outside is sooting where it's been used for cooking on open fire. And again, that's a technique that goes out once you get into the 16th century. They're using different sorts of ovens mostly. So, and you can see on the break there, you can see something about the fabric. There's not much in the way of inclusions mixed in, but that's how you date it. And then, so we have that. Then we've got, for example, now here is a later bit. And you can see when you contrast here, you've just got a couple of tiny little speckles of glaze on that. Here you've got a really smooth, glassy, glossy glaze. I mean, this is typical. I don't know if this is Cistercian ware, but it looks quite like it. And that's coming in the sort of 15th, 16th into 17th century. You get quite a lot of red fabrics with these black glossy glazes on them into the 18th and 19th century, when they're these big panchion dishes that are really typical of farms, where you're putting the milk in those dishes to let the cream rise to the surface, and then you can just scoop the cream off the top. But this, I think, is a bit early. But you can see how different these are. So I think that's probably the earliest. This is also, you can see on the inside of this, it's much darker. You see the broken edge there. It looks the same colour on the outside, broadly, pinkish colour. But when you look at the section through it, you can see this is pink pretty much all the way through, whereas this is grey in the centre there. And that's where the clay is still reduced. It hasn't oxidised out, and that means it's not been fired as at higher a temperature, probably because they're using a slightly less sophisticated kiln, where if they open the door to let the oxygen in to oxidise the pottery, the temperature drops, so then it doesn't fire. So that's why this is probably earlier than that, and that is earlier than that. And all of those are earlier than... Have I got a modern piece? Yes, I mean, you can see here, this is your kind of white china that, we're quite familiar with.
And those 4 examples you've shown there that have come out this weekend, are they particularly associated with anywhere geographically? Would they have come from anywhere? Or is that the kind of thing that people would have been making across the UK?
So some of them have come from specific places. We have got a couple of sherds. I can go and try and find one in a minute, of Staffordshire slipware, which is very, very identifiable. It's often a kind of sort of ochre yellowy colour, sandy yellow colour with brown slip decoration on it. Yep. And the patterns can be quite exotic. And that's very, very indicative of production in Staffordshire, particularly around Stoke-on-Trent, the 5 towns of the potteries. So we know where that will have come from. Cistercian ware is produced that's produced quite widely. There's Ely ware, for example, that's produced in Ely that looks quite like that. But that's a type of pottery that's produced quite widely. So some of them we will know. If you look at something like the blue and white, the classic willow pattern plate, and people will know that. And if you don't, you just Google willow pattern, it'll come out and show you. And it's telling the story of the princess and escaping because she wants to marry the man she loves and all this sort of thing. And all goes horribly wrong. And they get turned into doves, which is why you will see doves at the top of the picture. That was a really popular design. So that started off, I think it came from China originally when it was hand painted. And then in Staffordshire, they developed this sort of transfer printing technology that they could just create exactly the same picture again and again. But then those willow pattern are produced all across the world. There are production sites in Peru, in China. There are conflicts over who's going to get the market from Peru to somewhere else. There's a lot of high seas skullduggery about this sort of thing. So if you find this blue and white ware, it's very dateable, but in terms of where it comes from, probably the nearest market town.
So some very, very interesting finds there. We will let Carenza go for a moment because she might be able to find some other things as well. We'll be back in just a moment. We are back live in Stanton under Bardon as the rain starts, but we're coming up to 3 o'clock and people will be now backfilling some of their test pits at the more than 20 sites across Stanton under Bardon, where our volunteers have been putting in the backbreaking work to dig down. Some, I think, have got down about 70 centimetres into that 7th context. And you saw there some of the pottery that we've been finding here, medieval pottery. We will bring you some more of the finds, but just to a reminder, because you may have missed us earlier on, you don't always have to dig down to find the history of a place. And a fantastic example of that is just north of us here at Stanton under Bardon. So as you take the path north from Stanton under Bardon going towards Billabarra, you'll come across this strange
embankment structure. It's not geological, not glacial or anything like that. This is actually the evidence of some of the fascinating industrial heritage that's here in Stanton under Bardon. This is the Cliff Hill mineral railway line that ran from Cliff Hill, created in 1896, and it wasn't closed until 1948. This was a small 2-foot gauge railway line that ran from Cliff Hill, taking the produce of that quarry all the way to the railhead near Bardon. And if we just pause here and take a pan down to the right hand side, you can see how much of a prominent embankment there is here. So it's always worth having a look around you, because you don't always have to dig to find some of this heritage. A fascinating bit of local history, sadly put out of action as lorries became more popular to move the stone. But you can trace pretty much all of the route of the mineral railway from modern day Cliff Hill Quarry along here, Billabara Lane, where there's a few points where you can see the rails in the road surface, and all the way along to Bardon Hill. Check it out sometime.
Hello, welcome live back to Stanton under Bardon Village Hall, where we're going to bring you some of the more finds. You can see groups are coming back in from digging some of their more than 20 test pits across Charnwood Forest. Oh, we've got another find being joined by Carenza again. So can we put the finds cam back on, please, so we can see some of these? And if we put it right next to the scale bar there, we can see things there. Oh, there we go. That will fit there, so you can see everything that Carenza's going to talk about now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've just literally been having a look through this, but I think this kind of sums up a lot of it. So we've got lots of what a lot of them are producing. A lot of sort of brick and tile, which is evidence from former buildings. None of that's looking terribly old. Big lump of iron slag here. They're often associated with farms, farmyards, where you get the smith visiting occasionally. But in Charnwood, it might also be to do with iron working. But that's a big old chunk of it there. And it's probably literally, it's fallen on the ground there. And that's the sort of surface that's just... you know, dried out, as it were. But that's just a bit of drain pipe of some description, I think. But what's so fun about this is it's just that insight into daily life. So we've got a little plant label there, Golden Lady, white, March, May, 60 centimetres. There's all these little beads. They're BB gun pellets, apparently. I know nothing about this, but that's what we've been told by someone who does. And again, it's a classic case of often the expertise for these sorts of digs comes from other people, so you've got that. And then what you've also got here, there's a little bit of boar tusk or pig tusk there. So again, that feels farmyardy. If you buy pork from the supermarket these days, you're not getting the head with it. So that suggests you've got a farm that's processing stuff. And then we got, which I think is probably the prize find, is our dinosaur, which you've probably seen this before. But you can see we've got this entire plastic dinosaur. Turn that the right way up there. So we've got somebody who's got all these little BB gun, we've got dinosaur, obviously little other bits of plastic, but you can almost feel the children playing in the garden there. Whether they buried this deliberately or just lost it. We think it's an Ankylosaurus, I think.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, these all came from just one spit, that one 10-centimetre layer. So you can find a huge amount in just one layer in one test pit.
Exactly, just one 10-centimetre layer. And in this one, it's the very top layer as well. So it's context 1. So this is just literally on the surface. I'm sure we can find out what this almost looks like a sort of cereal box toy or something. We could almost certainly date that quite closely there. But it's this snapshot you get into lives in the past. And as I say, this is, as you say, this is very 20th century, but these hints. I don't think that smithing waste is coming from the 20th century. So there's always those hints that you've got more further down. So we have to have a look at test bit 6 and see what came out of spit 2, spit 3, spit 4, and however many others. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that because the dinosaur's got to get star billing.
Thank you so much. And we always like a bit of geology mixed in as well.
Dinosaurs what got me into archaeology. When I was about 6 or 7, it was dinosaurs I was really into.
There you go, everyone. The archaeology can inspire geology and geology inspire archaeology. We're going to bring Matthew in. Thank you, Matthew, for joining us live in Stanton under Bardon. Tell us what you do and how you're involved in all of this.
So I'm the lead archaeologist for the University of Leicester on the project. So I guess my role is running around making sure everything's working all right.
And do you have a particular, obviously you're overseeing all of the digs, but do you have a particular interest in a particular time period that you are particularly enthused by?
Medieval settlement and its development. Mostly what I do commercially is urban archaeology. So that's Leicester primarily and what we how that's formed over time since the Roman period and the Iron Age period. But side hustle is my interest in medieval villages as well. So projects like this allow me to explore those other areas of interest in anything to do with medieval settlement, really.
And so to this village and how it's all been going over the past weekend, have you been finding what you might have expected? Did you have any expectations of what you might find, and what's been coming out of the test pits for you? Anything of particular interest?
Yes, I think it's been really successful. We've effectively had a stretch of test pits spanning the entire length of modern Stanton under Bardon, but we suspect the older bit of it is the southern end around where the pub is today, and that seems to be holding out. I mean, when we look at test pitting where medieval pottery is coming from, we're getting a really nice cluster from around that area to the south. We've got a whole group of little test pits there that have all produced not too much, but that we've seen so far, but nice sharp edged, which suggests that that's occupation very near to those test pits, which is exactly where we were hoping we would find them.
So just a reminder, very similar to what we might be looking at in geology. If something's got sharp edges to it, it hasn't been transported very far because those sharp edges would have got bashed off it. So that's a really nice take-home piece of archaeology that you can apply if you find anything at home. Sharp edges near to where it was broken, smooth edges, it's been churned up a bit.
Yeah, and we can actually prove that because we've got on some of our test pits, like in the playing fields here in the village, we can actually still see the medieval ridge and furrow, the plough remains there, and the pottery coming out of that is very worn, as you'd expect in the plough. So you can use that to confirm that's what you should expect from plough soil and the wear on it. So then when you find things that are sharper edges, you know that hasn't happened in those areas.
So we've been talking about some of the medieval pottery that's been found. What kind of numbers? People might not know what medieval means. What are you able to even roughly put some numbered ages on those?
So the majority of the pottery we've seen is probably 12th to 14th century. And then we've seen a little bit of sort of late 14th to early 16th century. So that's sort of later medieval going into the early Tudor period. And then the vast majority of the material we're getting is 18th, 19th, early 20th century, particularly from the north end of the village where we've got all the terraced houses, the quarry houses from the late 19th century. They've got dates on them. We know when they were built, and we know they were built on fields. And so the majority of the finds from those are consistent with the date of those properties, which is, well, we expected that as well. We haven't washed everything yet. We haven't seen everything yet. There is a lot of stuff that we may not have fully seen yet, so there could still be a lot of surprises in there. Hopefully there's a lot more medieval pottery in there that will help us better define those areas of occupation, but we'll have to wait and see a little bit.
Now, just for everyone who's watching, both live and recorded, thanks for everyone who's watching again on YouTube and Facebook. Those things that are still to be washed, still to be analysed and looked at, what will happen to those discoveries still to be made on the weeks ahead? What will happen to that information and those potentially very exciting discoveries?
So everything we've collected today will be going back to the University of Leicester. We've got a team of volunteers and students that will finish the washing process, what we haven't managed today. We'll start cataloguing and identifying everything accurately, and then we'll be creating reports for every single test pit we've dug. In the autumn, sometime we'll be back to the village to report the results, the full results, and tell the story of the village.
There you go. If you've liked the brief summary we've given you today, you can come back, follow us on charnwoodforest.org and our social media, and also our colleagues at ULAS, and I'm sure we'll be advertising that so you can come and find out more. Now, just finally, before we let you go, this is only the second of 3 community digs we're doing in Charnwood Forest. Why should people get involved on the 4th and 5th of July in Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eaves?
That's going to be an epic dig. We've got lots of test pit locations. We're doing 2 digs in 2 different villages effectively over one weekend, but it's great fun. If you've got an interest in archaeology, you just got an interest in the past, you just like being outside, you want looking for a family activity, it's brilliant fun. It's a great 2 days, get a little bit muddy, find some interesting things, meet some new people, make some friends. it's definitely worth doing.
So do find out more on our website and the ULAS website, and you can get involved in so many ways. That you can get involved in the digging, the sieving of the soil that's coming out. You could spend, if that isn't to your liking, you could spend your weekend in the village hall cleaning up finds and getting the mud off some of these things for the first time in hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Thousands of years. Yeah, all ages, all abilities. Doesn't matter if you've never done it before. Doesn't matter if you're an experienced archaeologist. There's something for everybody in it.
So that is your call to action, ladies and gentlemen. We look forward to seeing you on the 4th and 5th of July. Thank you very much again, Matthew. Right, we will hopefully bring you a few more finds on Finds Cam, but let's just bring in that slide, which will help you see some of the things we might be expecting to find. We, of course, always have to be looking out for something interesting and geological, but you can see there's an expectation that we're at least keeping our eye out for pottery of many different ages, those clay pipes, but also more modern things, plastic, and also bones. Many of these areas, many of the houses that we're digging in have been built on formerly agricultural land, and we might be finding evidence for that. Now, of particular interest to me, of course, not everything that has come out of the test pits has been archaeological in nature. And if we can just zip over to Finds Cam, we can show you one of these finds. This was from, we can see, context 3 of test pit 7. And you might just be able to see there. Let's make that a little bit bigger so you can see. This little shell, and this little shell only about as big as my thumbnail there, but you can see it's got lots of layers to it and it's curved round, and that is actually not modern or even recent. That is a Jurassic shell, a Jurassic bivalve, known informally as the devil's toenail, but its scientific name is Gryphea, and that would have come from Jurassic rocks. Now, you might be thinking, well, Charnwood Forest doesn't have any Jurassic rocks, so how can a Jurassic Gryphea, a shell from many hundreds of millions of years ago, have made its way to Charnwood Forest? And of course, that would have been brought down in the glacial around 440,000 years ago, scooping up that glacier, scooping up bits of the Jurassic rock to the north of here, to the north and the east, and then dropping it on Charnwood Forest as those glaciers melted. So there's something for everyone. So do join us in Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eaves, where we'll be bringing you more opportunities to get involved with archaeology. We'll be back just after this. Hello, everybody, and a big hello to Wendy, who's joining us all the way from Milwaukee in Wisconsin on the other side of the pond. Thank you, Wendy, for joining us here today, and everyone who's joining us live and also watching again on Facebook and YouTube. Now, you can see a lot of the finds we've been having are quite modern things from the past 100 to 200 years. We've had plant pots and coffee cups. We have had nails and screws and lots of plastic toys, and we saw some of those elements, and even pellets from a BB gun. But much deeper in history, we've also seen some medieval pottery, and we showed you some of that earlier on with that kind of a biscuity looking texture. And a really interesting thing to look out for there was not only whether it had the pointy square edges or the rounded edges, but also looking inside it if it was reduced in the middle. That's those darker colours telling you how hot it had been fired. I'm going to ask if Julie can join us again. as we come to the end, the cake is now being served, and I'm missing out. So the quicker we finish the live stream, the quicker I get my cake. Julie, sorry, we did get you a little bit live.
Yes, I'm sorry that the signal wasn't great, was it? Really, I'm afraid you sounded a bit like a Dalek, Jack, when we were up there. But hopefully you caught a little bit of what was going on at that test pit. So they'd dug down, I think it was about 60 centimetres, and they'd found some quite interesting bits of medieval pottery in there, a little bit of flint. And they were at the point where they were recording, and I was hoping to be able to show you that process of recording the final stages of the test pit, where they draw each side and the base and record all of that before they backfill. But unfortunately it wasn't to be today, but hopefully in a future live stream we'll be able to show that.
So just remind us, what you say recording, what kind of information are people collecting? They're not just putting their shovel in and scooping it up and sending us back a bag. What are they recording as they go? And I suppose, why is it easy to do, even if it's your first time? You don't need to be an expert.
No, you don't need to be an expert. And I mean, we're very, very fortunate to have Carenza and Matthew involved in this dig, and they've developed a pack of information that we can give to our test pit teams that really take them through the process step by step. Makes it very easy, even if you've never done it before. And generally, we try to assign someone who's done some test pitting before to each test pit, so you've got a friendly person there to help you along. And in terms of your first question, which was about what is recorded, we record the nature of the soil as it's coming out. So often you find the top couple of layers are nice topsoil, it's nice and easy to sift, beautiful dark soil, and as you get further down you might find that you're getting lots of pebbles, lots of clay, and as that soil changes you record that, what you're finding in it. Are you finding flecks of charcoal, for instance? How much pottery are you getting out of it? You're getting lots and lots of broken Victorian pot, or is there virtually nothing? And that tells us a little bit about how that bit of land has been used over time, and gives us lots and lots of useful information. And so when it comes to the end of the test pit, we also draw the sides so that we can see how deep each of those layers were. So we're asking the test pitters to take out 10 centimetres at a time, but we might see the changes actually at 5 centimetres and then at 25 centimetres. So the sides of the test pit, when they draw that, they're able to then see, we can see exactly when that soil change occurs and where those different layers are.
So it's important to note, it's very easy to get involved in this if you're thinking of joining us in Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eves in July. Experts are absolutely essential, but they're not necessarily guiding each moment of digging of the test pit. They're there to help you understand if it's a 19th century piece of pot or a 16th century piece of pot, and they're going to guide you through those finds as they're found throughout the day. But it's very easy to get involved, do some of the digging and record the data that is not just for you and your group who are working on that site. It's going to help our broader knowledge of some of these villages, because this is a technique that has been used all across the country and now all around the world. But why have we brought this to Charnwood Forest? I know we had an earlier project, Charnwood Roots, but what is it revealing? Why do it this way rather than having shall we say, a formal dig?
Well, I think there's a couple of answers to that, Jack, really. Firstly, although Charnwood Forest has had some archaeological research, it hasn't had any kind of really in detail research of each of the villages. And so we're able to add quite a lot to the archaeological record. Quite often when archaeological finds are found now, it's partly because there's been a new housing development or some large-scale infrastructure project. And that, of course, is often on the outskirts of the village, not actually where all the current houses are, and a lot of the places where people's back gardens now are and are undisturbed is actually sitting over the older parts of the village. So if we want to understand that period of the village's history, digging in people's back gardens is absolutely the way to go. And I think because Charnwood Forest really hasn't had that much of that kind of research, it was felt to be a really useful way of us understanding more about the development of the forest. So we know that different villages have been settled at different points from the written record, but what we don't know is what was happening before Doomsday and before the earliest written records we have for some of those villages like Newtown, Linford and Woodhouse Eaves, which don't appear in the written records till perhaps the 13th, 14th century.
And we keep mentioning Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eaves because we would love you to join us there, and there's still plenty of time to get involved. Do you have any particular expectations of what we might find in Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eaves, or a bit of a wish list of a question you'd like answered, or a particular find?
Well, I think that traditionally villages with the names Woodhouse or Woodhouse Eaves, they're suggestive of a particular type of settlement where it's kind of the edge of the forest has been sort of nibbled away at. So it will be really interesting to see whether that is borne out in the pottery assemblages that we find. So do we find anything earlier, or is it really coming from the period that when we've got the written records for Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eaves? So it's really sort of testing those hypotheses about what we think from the written records, whether that's actually borne out by the archaeological record. And I think it's where you put those two things together is where you really begin to understand a village's history.
But we can't put you on the line for a particular find that you're hoping for, your wish list.
Well, I always like to find prehistoric things. I think that's the thing that really excites me, is when we get a nice bit of like a prehistoric scraper or a blade, because that's even from before the villages exist, when we've just got nomadic people in effect moving through the landscape, and that I always find really exciting. We have occasionally found those sorts of finds in village digs, so if we find one of those, I'll be over the moon.
There you have it. Now, just before we leave, Julie, just explain, Julie, what's happening now in the village hall. There's lots of people who've been volunteering are behind us eating cake. Why have they come back here?
Well, they've come back here because what we like to do at the end of these digs is to bring all of the test pitters, all of the volunteers that have been taking part, back together and to have a sort of wrap-up session where we allow each test pit group to tell us what they found, what their favourite find has been, what it was like for them taking part. And then we begin to be able to share with each other what's been found during the day, because most of the volunteers over the weekend have been focusing on a single test pit and they're completely unaware of what's been happening elsewhere in the village. So it's great to bring everybody back together so they can get the full picture of what's been happening. And also they've worked really super hard. So cake is absolutely essential to just, boost their morale for the final hour or so of the day when we do the wrap-up session. They've really earned it. So we've got them some beautiful cakes from Beth's Bakes, which is a local company, and they've provided some wonderful cupcakes for us, which we're going to be enjoying in a moment. And then we'll get together for about an hour to discuss what's been found. And also, a lot of when we've had a look at some of the pottery actually at the test pit sites, we've had an idea of what we might be, but they're all dirty at that point. So that's why we've been bringing them back to the village hall. And so it'll be nice for the people who've been working on those test pits to find out, was that piece of pottery actually medieval, or did it turn out to be a bit of Victorian terracotta pot?
Absolutely. And we've brought you today, Carenza's joined us and Matthew's joined us, but there are other experts here bringing a wealth of knowledge of all sorts of areas across archaeology. So we've got people on hand who can really answer some of these big questions when we find a mystery item. I think I asked you if you had a favourite earlier on, but have you seen anything else that's caught your eye?
Well, one thing I thought was really interesting that actually popped up yesterday, which I'd forgotten about, and this was this tiny little terracotta guy. I don't know whether you've had him.
He's been on screen.
So yeah, I loved him. He was fantastic, and it took us a little while to work out what he might have been, but I believe that the consensus is a Victorian whistle of some kind. So yeah, so that was fascinating. We don't normally find that.
Yes, so AI reverse image searches have proved very, very useful, taking a photograph of some of these finds and putting them to see what the internet can provide. But also your thoughts on some of the finds are also very useful. And as Carenza said earlier on, if you have any thoughts on who those characters might be that we showed you, some of those toys, and particularly what date they might have come from, that can be really, really useful for providing further information. So finally, Julie, just in case people are joining us and didn't hear it earlier on, if people do want to get involved with that dig on the 4th and 5th of July, where should they go to find out more?
Well, they should definitely come to our website, so charnwoodforestgeopark.org, and have a look at our news section, and you will see some news articles about the digs that we're doing, which have links where you can sign up and volunteer. You can find out a whole lot more about what's involved, and then you can contact us, put your name down. We hold a briefing session online about a week before the dig, so you can learn exactly what's going to be involved before you take part. So it's really great fun. Everybody that's been involved has really enjoyed it. So I highly recommend that you come and get involved in Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eaves if you've got a little bit of an interest in archaeology or Charnwood Forest.
Or geology. I will be there to show off some rocks and make sure it's not all about human history. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, I will defend our geological interests. Though it's good that we have a few days set aside for archaeology. Fantastic. Thank you once again, Julie, because I think there's a hive of activity going on in the background. So we will release you.
Thank you very much. I'll go and help get the tarps out of the way and get the chairs laid out and ready for all of our volunteers to come back.
Fantastic. We have just a few moments left, but we'll be back just after this very short break. Hello, everyone. And as we wrap up here at Stanton under Bardon Village Hall, I will bring it round because it's a wonderful hive of activity at the moment as the finds are being packed away. Perhaps you can follow me around. Some of the finds are being packed away now and they'll all go off to the University of Leicester. Of course, a lot of mud on the Village Hall floor and it's being very assiduously tidied up as well. And lots of cake being eaten because it's very much deserved. As I step back, you can see it's a very sunny day here now in Stanton under Bardon, but that wasn't always the case. And earlier on, it did get rather rainy just before we came live. So everyone's been volunteering very, very hard. As I've said, there'll be another talk later in the year that will bring you live information on all the finds once they've all been tidied up. We're only bringing you the very initial discoveries here on this live stream. But we also would say do join us again at the same time on Sunday, the 5th of July at 2 till 3:30 when we'll be doing our final one of these live streams, bringing you all of that information that we can of the initial discoveries found at Woodhouse and Woodhouse Eaves at the final one of the Geopark Community Archaeological Digs. But as we finish up here in Stanton under Bardon, a big thank you to you for joining us live or on the recorded version, and also to the volunteers who've joined us from Stanton, from the Geopark, and more broadly around the country. It really is a huge help to everything we're doing. To our friends at the University of Leicester Archaeological Services and the University of Lincoln, and also once more to the National Lottery Heritage Fund, who have funded and made all this possible. Thank you so much, and we will join you again soon for another one of our live streams. Do join us again and find out more at charnwoodforest.org.